Hello, I'm Anawiltus, and today I wanted to show you the shortcomings of what is called a jungle primary or a nonpartisan blanket primary. So what this is a primary election, which is an election that happens before the main or final election, in which all candidates from all the parties participate. So therefore, it's nonpartisan, which means all the parties and nonpartisan candidates as well participate. And it's a blanket primary, so they're all together. And then what happens is that the two with the greatest percentage uh, end up advancing to the main election. Now, some people think that this is better than established systems because it helps reduce partisanship, but I think the opposite is true. And I also think that this actually reduces the representational power of elections to some extent. And let me explain why. So, this here is a real life example. You can find this on a government website where there was a state treasurer. I think this is for Washington, the state of Washington in the US. And there were five candidates. And three candidates were Democratic, and two candidates were Republican. And of course, the two candidates with the highest percentage would advance to the final election. Now, here's the problem, as you might notice. What we see on the percentages is that we have two Republicans here, 25% and some change, 23% and some change, adding up to about 48% and some change there. Meanwhile, the Democratic candidates combined add up to about 51% and some change. So this means that the majority of the voters at this point in the election preferred a Democratic type candidate. Now, the problem here is that because there were three Democratic candidates and the vote got split three ways, you end up with a situation where none of the Democrats passed through to the main election, and only the Republicans passed through, even though the Republicans overall were less popular than the Democrats were collectively. And this means that the opposite could happen as well, where there's, let's say, one Democratic candidate and 10 Republican candidates. Let's go very extreme on this. And let's say that the overall popularity is 50-50. Actually, that wouldn't work under this system. Bad example. Better example, two Democratic candidates and five Republicans. So let's say that overall the popularity of Democrats is 50, popularity of Republicans is 50, but the votes get evenly split within the party. So you end up with two Democrats with 25% and five Republicans each with 10%. And of course, only the Democrats advance, even though half the voters would have preferred a Republican candidate. So this is a big problem if you're trying to make elections representative. And I don't think that this helps solve any major problems because obviously the strategies are going to be to here's one strategy that could occur: to have a sort of secret primary before the main primary, so that you only have one candidate from your party participating, so that you automatically get a win, or maybe two candidates, or to bribe other candidates from the other party to join in the election in order to thin out the support of the other party. Now, of course, this problem to some extent could exist uh, in the more traditional sense that there might be a third party candidate that takes away from another party, although that's less likely to occur because of how party loyalties are decided. But ultimately, the way I see it is that you have interest groups that have common values and common interests, and they together form parties, and the parties together form coalitions. So, for example, you've got the Republicans, and within the Republicans, there's a bunch of different groups. You've got Tea Party, you've got neocons, you've got Trumpists, who are similar to neocons but slightly different. And there's also the Constitution Party, which has a lot of things in common with the Republicans, so would coalesce with the Republicans. Or the Democrats. There's socialists among the Democrats. There's progressives. There's blue dogs, etc. And you also have the Green Party and the Socialist Party as well, and they would coalesce with the Democrats. But under a system where you have this type of situation, that is less likely to happen because there would be a push for less candidates to participate. Because let's say a primary, in a single party primary, what that creates is a situation where smaller, less popular candidates have a chance because they are going against like-minded candidates who might be more popular at the time, but who are also vying for like-minded voters. And that means that smaller candidates can actually make it in single party primaries in ways that are not expected. For example, Donald Trump, until he announced, was nobody's top pick. And in fact, the growth of Donald Trump's popularity is something that occurred as his party primary went on. So that's an example of that. Or Bernie Sanders became a lot more popular as his primary went on, although he didn't make it in the end, though. So this is, in my opinion, the reason why single party primaries have a significance in that they do create that situation. Now, that being said, if you want to solve the problem of individuals only thinking along party lines when they vote, creating a system like this doesn't help, because I think this would only polarize people even more, because they would have to think more about voting strategically. I think other systems, such as systems of ranked voting or cumulative ballots and things like that, are more effective at solving the problems that this attempts to solve. Now, that being said, there's one argument that you could make. What about regions of a country where there's only one major party that is popular among the people? Obviously, in those regions, you would want the main candidates to be candidates that are actually representative of the people. Because what would happen is you would have the Democratic primary, and then in the main election, there's maybe a Republican who gets 5% of a vote, and obviously the real winner is really decided in the Democratic primary, because that's the majority of the population in this district. Well, here's the problem with that attitude. The problem with that attitude is that that creates a situation that is not well suited to change. Because let's say, hypothetically, that the political situation yesterday is different from that of today. The political situation tomorrow is different from that today as well. So, knowing this, and knowing that political realignments have happened in the past, just because uh, most parties are unpopular in a certain jurisdiction doesn't mean that they might not become more popular in the future. Additionally, what you could do is you could simply locally divide your party into sub-parties so that you could all run in the main election if you wanted to. Now that's a more complicated thing. You could have your progressives, you could have your socialists. And I know that that might split the vote somewhat, but again, that's something you could do if you wanted to. You don't have to leave all your candidates in the primary and only send one to the main election if you don't want to. Although that is ideally the superior strategy when it concerns first past the post elections. But in a place like Florida, where I live, where people are trying to implement something like this is actually a very bad idea, because Florida is very it's a swing state, so it's very divided into two large voting blocks. So it doesn't really make sense to want to abolish uh, party primaries in favor of having one large primary, because that would create this exact situation that you are seeing right now, that occurred in a 2016 election in Washington for state treasurer, where one party had one more candidate in the election, and because of that, even though that party was overall more popular, they didn't get any candidates through. And that's a problem that you should want to avoid as much as possible. Now, that being said, questions as to the privatization of party primaries, I think that's fair. I don't think that the central government should be paying for, or any form of government should really be paying for party primaries, because parties themselves are interest groups and are not part of the government themselves, nor are they vital aspects of government function. I think that this is something that the partymen can organize on their own, that they don't need the government for. And so I don't see any reason to have government funded primaries at all. I think there should only be one main election. Now, it could be the way it currently is with first past the post. I think a ranked ballot is probably a superior system, because it actually allows third parties to get candidates in, and it means that overall you don't have a problem with multiple candidates from the same party, unlike what you have in this system here. Because with a ranked ballot, you could have multiple candidates from the same party without somehow damaging the outcome of the election. But anyway, that's my opinion. Tell me what you think in the comments section below, and I'll be seeing you all next time on Awiltus. Over and out.